Can you tell me about yourself and what motivated you, what motivated your involvement and, creation of this company or this innovation?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a research scientist at the Yale Cancer Biology Institute, and basically my research focus is how lung cancers develop resistance to targeted therapies. And the as I was studying that, I realized that there's mainly two forms of resistance. There's genetic resistance. What happens is the drug may work at first, but over time the cancer develops mutations, so the drug doesn't work. And there's something called the adaptive response. Basically, cancers are very, very resilient and clever. And if you can imagine a cancer cell, there's a lot of different signaling networks that are going on. And when you use one drug, it usually hits one protein in that signaling network. But the cancer is able to rewire everything so that it doesn't need that protein in the first place and is able to develop resistance to cancer. So this is just like the research that I came across and these discoveries I came across in my own research. So what I did was I approached the professor I work with, Mark Lemon. He's the co-director of the Yale Cancer Biology Institute, and he's a leading expert in cancer biology and cancer signaling. I approached him with an idea I had for a new drug that could stop the cancer from rewiring and reorganizing its networks, basically making it rely on that one protein the first drug hits. He was very interested in the idea. So then I reached out to another past colleague of mine, Dr. Ray Lee. He was the director of clinical research at Merck and then at Roche, where he basically oversaw the development of Roche's entire oncology pipeline. So our team, although we only have 3 people right now, is very experienced. It brings a lot to the table, and I'm really excited to get to work with these people to hopefully bring a new innovative treatment for cancer.
I know you've spoken about it a little bit, but can you say more about specifically what problems your company is addressing?
Sure, yeah. So we're trying to develop a universal cancer drug enhancer, which is a very tall order, but we think we have the data to show that it works. Drug resistance is the cause of over 90% of cancer deaths. And it's one of the biggest problems, right? You give a drug to a patient, it may work at first, but then it stops working, or the drug may not work at all. So what we've noticed in our research is that although there's obviously cancer is very different, and the drugs that treat cancer are very different, what we found was that cancers actually use very common mechanisms of resistance. They rewire their signaling pathways in very similar ways to resist a number of therapies. So what we think is if we can have one drug that's able to stop this rewiring, then we can have some sort of cancer drug that you can basically add on to any existing therapy to overcome resistance to it. And that's what we hope to do.
That's awesome. As a cancer survivor, I'm all for that. So
yeah, definitely.
yeah, exactly. That's the one thing we hate is recurrence and then resistance. So, so who specifically experiences this problem? And you've kind of addressed it, but can you share an example of a story of how someone might experience this?
Sure, yeah.
You've kind of spoken to it already, but maybe more specifically.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So there's a physician that I work with, and sometimes I try to learn although I'm a research scientist, I try to learn as much as I can about the medical oncology and clinical side of things. So there's a physician that I observe a lot of times. And when he talks to these patients, he has a drug that works really well. It keeps the tumor at bay for a whole year. But then after a year, they show the scans and the tumor starts growing again. And for a lot of these cancers, they really only have 2 or 3 drugs they can try before they're out of luck. So what this physician tells me is like, David, if you can find a way to make that original drug work again, that will be such a game changer because we know the drug works to begin with. We just need to reset it so that it works again. And that's where we come in. There are also instances where there's a really promising drug, but it doesn't work for the patient to begin with. So we hope in those cases, we can just throw in our drug to give a second chance to the drug as well. So yeah, these are the cases that we're trying to solve.
In simple terms, and again, you've already done a pretty good job, but in simple terms, like you were explaining this to an 8th grade class, what would you tell them that your drug and company does?
Sure, definitely. I think a good analogy, funny enough, would be whack-a-mole. I mean, if you imagine the way we are currently treating cancer is there's one mole that pops up every time that you whack down, right? And the drug is the thing that whacks it down. But what happens really in cancer that we know now is when you whack down one mole, 10 others pop up at the exact same time. So you need something that can hit all 10 moles at the same time where it doesn't or it doesn't work. So that's what our drug is doing. Our drug is that one paddle or hammer that can hit all 10 moles at the same time that pop up after you hit that one mole with the original drug.
Great. Can you give me a use case of how your solution impacts the person having the problem?
Sure. Yeah. So and I'm happy to share all this data with you also. So we have some data to show. For example, we have a prostate cancer mouse model that is derived actually from the tissue of a patient who became resistant to hormone therapy. So we took that tissue, put it in a mouse, and let it grow. And what we did was we combined our drug with the original drug they were receiving, and you can see the tumor basically had a drastic decrease in size after we combined our two drugs. So this is, again, as I'm saying before, just proof of concept that we have mouse data and efficacy data to show that if that patient had received our drug in combination with their drug, then this would have worked in that patient.
What do you see as your biggest challenges lying ahead besides funding?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the main challenge would be the nanoparticle technology. And the reason I say that is because although there have been nanotechnologies approved in the market for cancer drugs, this nanoparticle technology, it depends on what you're encapsulating. Depending on what you encapsulate, it has different properties. And when we talk to the professor and the manufacturers for this nanoparticle, they say 95% sure, 97% sure it's going to work. But every drug is different. They tested in 5 different drugs already, and they show it's been successful. But there's always a chance it won't work. But that's something we'll have to see.
Thank you for watching the Lowdown on Cancer presented by the Cancer Fund. To learn more about what's coming in future episodes, visit us at www.cancerfund.com. While you're there, check out past episodes and be sure to click Join Us to become a member of the Cancer Fund community. As a member of the community, you'll receive early access to new interviews as well as other announcements. Make sure to connect to all of our social media channels so you don't miss a thing. In addition to getting early access to new episodes of the Lowdown on Cancer, Cancer Fund members play a critical role in driving cancer innovation forward so that one day we can more than hope. We can actually beat cancer. Thank you for joining us on this journey.